Thank you, and good morning to everybody. My name is Luisa Moreno, President of Defense Metals. Defense Metals Corp is a rare earth company with a very high quality asset in British Columbia. The project that we have is called WICHEEDA Rare Earth Project and has the potential to supply rare earths to the Western world. We have completed a PEA earlier last year, and we are currently advancing to a pre-feasibility study with a pilot plant mostly completed. Our location is quite strategic. We have significant infrastructure with access to road, proximity to rail and power, contrary to many other rare earth projects in Canada and elsewhere. We also built a very strong technical team with significant knowledge in rare earths, and I will talk more later about that. Our stock has been a little bit volatile. Currently, we have a 50 million market cap. Total common shares are about 208 million shares outstanding. And fully diluted, it's about 262 million shares. Rare earth, as many of you know, is used in almost every single industry that one can imagine, from power generation to medicine, chemicals and catalysts, agriculture, computing, in automotive, as well as defense, hence the name of the company, Defense Metals. In automotive, is used in electric vehicles. Magnets, rare earth magnets are used to make permanent magnet motors, which are the most efficient motors for electric vehicles. Neodymium and praseodymium are the strongest magnets known, and they also used in other green technologies like wind turbines. What we intend to do with WICHEEDA is to position the project as a leading supplier of rare earth. As I mentioned, and you can see in this slide, WICHEEDA is located in Canada, British Columbia, and if we are able to reach significant production, we could potentially contribute to about 8 to 10% of the global production based on current projections and current production rather. And so we will be able to, what we intend to do is to crack or build a hydromet plant in North America, or in Canada, to be more specific. And then the separation could be hopefully in North America or in somewhere in the West. As you can see in this slide, a lot of the cracking or hydromet processing still happens in China. That controls about 80–85% of the total hydromet production. In fact, China controls the supply chain of rare earths. Although they only produce about 60% of the total rare earths in the world, they do process and make metals and make end products in China and control most of that supply chain. What we want to do with WICHEEDA is to be able to break away from that. An electric vehicle uses about 1 kilo to 3 kilos of neodymium iron boron magnets. And as I said, those magnets are used to make, to make permanent magnet motors. And approximately 93% of all electric vehicles are using that technology, including Tesla, GM, Ford, Hyundai, Toyota, and so forth. So the projections are that if we are to be able to supply rare earth for that one application, based on demand in 10 years, we would have to double the production of rare earth. So the electric vehicle is a significant driver of demand for electric vehicles. And that's just one application. So our PEA, that is, I must say, somewhat obsolete at this point for several reasons. As you can see in this slide, we didn't only use a conservative price relative to our a conservative long-term price for neodymium and praseodymium relative to our peers, which was about $100 per kilo. We also changed the hydromet process. We used to, the PEA is based on a caustic crack process, and now we're using an acid bake. And the 2021 resource estimation was based on 4,249 meters of drilling. And now over 10,000 meters have since been drilled. So, and we are imminently looking at updating the resource. So there has been significant changes in the last year. And as I said, we are already working towards the pre-feasibility study, but nevertheless, it's important to highlight the PEA results. And these numbers are in US dollars. So our NPV plus tax, 8% was 397 million, about over 500 million in Canadian dollars. The IRR post-tax is 18%, our payback period 5 years. The initial CapEx, excluding offsite infrastructure CapEx, it's about 277 million. So we did, this slide shows a sensitivity or stress tests to prices and CapEx and OpEx. And what we try to show here is that in the case of CapEx or OpEx, with the slides on the left, is to show that even if we were off in CapEx and OpEx numbers, which we don't think we are, we would still have a positive NPV, a positive project. And in the case of prices, because we use a relatively conservative long-term prices for the life of the project of $100 for neodymium and praseodymium, if we were to increase this price by 50%, for instance, you could see that would have an NPV of over $1 billion. In fact, you have 1.6 billion that's in Canadian dollars if we were to increase prices by 50% to $150 per kilo for NdPr in the long term, average long-term prices, that is. This slide shows the block model, the resource block model. Again, we have drilled quite a lot, and this block model would have to be further updated. But what I would like to show you is that the light colors, the yellows and the greens, really refer to very high grade. And you can see the scale that shows that it's 3.8 and upwards of 5% total rare earth. And that high grade is nicely positioned at the surface. So what this translates to is that in the first few years of production, we will expect to have very high grade rare earth. Again, as I mentioned earlier, we have very good infrastructure. We strategically positioned 80 kilometers from Prince George, and which has the project also has access via roads, and you could see a Google image that shows that it would take about an hour and 40 minutes if we were to drive from Prince George to WICHEEDA Lake, and the project is not very far from there. We also have Prince Rupert, which is the third largest port in Canada, which is just 500 kilometers from the project. And the rail is, there's a rail accessibility in Prince George, and he also crosses by not far from the project. Based on the limited drilling that we did, the 4,000 meters that I mentioned, we estimated inferred resources of about 5 million tons. Indicated resources of 5 million tons at average 2.95% TREO, and inferred resource of 29.5 million at 1.83%. Now, because we have drilled so much more, we expect the resource to be updated. More specifically, we did a lot of infill drilling. We should see a lot of the inferred resource be upgraded to indicated and hopefully maintain these nice grades because of the drilling results that we saw and has been published. In terms of the flow sheet, it's quite simple, relatively simple, which, when it comes to rare earths is always tricky to talk about simplicity because, each deposit is different and requires obviously some adjustments depending on the deposit and minerals and so forth. But among our peers, our flow sheet is fairly straightforward and is similar to other producers, in fact. So we will mine, crush, and grind, and then do a direct flotation to produce a high product concentrate, mineral concentrate with more than 40% EREO. And I'll share some of the results. And after that, we will do the acid bake and then water leaching. And we will go through several standard purification steps, standard for rare earths, in order to produce a chemical mix concentrate that will sell. The PA envisions that we will sell the mixed chemical concentrate instead of separating. In the pre-feasibility study, we will investigate the economics of potentially separating. So this slide shows some of the results that basically reinforces the advantage of our deposits compared to many others, which is the ability to produce a high-grade mineral concentrate. We have tested different samples, in the deposit at different depths to really test the deposit and prove that we are able to produce this high-grade mineral concentrate, which is a requirement today, anyways, to date, for any rare earth, or I would say that the producers today of rare earth, hard rock rare earth, all of them produce high-grade concentrate. And in order to be able to be economic, that is a very important step. Our deposit has 3 different main lithologies. We call it DC, XE, and SYN. DC stands for dolomite carbonatite and comprises most of the deposit. And as you can see in the table, it generates relatively high-grade concentrate, 44.6. Those are the levels of mineral concentrate we have been able to see with this particular lithology. The other 2, xenolytic lithology and the cyanide lithology, we see lower grades and lower and lower concentration of material, but you still see it's very close, and the results are still very close to the 40% that we're targeting. The MC is the master sample, and that is mixed and probably resembles mostly what we would see throughout the life mine. And again, it shows very high grade mineral concentrate, relatively speaking, so more than 40%, in the same levels that we sort of forecasted in the PA. So this is very important. We also have done some hydrometallurgy result tests, and we've been able to see that recovery of praseodymium and neodymium were north of 95%. That is a significant improvement over the previous process, where we saw a recovery of about 87%. So the acid bake is working very well. We have published some results, and now we're doing the pilot plant, which is a much larger scale and is dynamic scale as well. And that has been published. And again, we're seeing very, very good results, more than 90% recovery at larger scale, and good recoveries. This is probably one of the most important slides that we have, where it compares the WICHEEDA project to other producers. And so you see Mountain Pass in the US with 8% grade, Mount Weld, Linus in Australia has 7% grade. The projects in China, Bionobo has about 6%, and the Xinjiang in China about 3.7. Many other projects in China have actually grades between 2 and 3%, which is similar to what WICHEEDA has. So without a doubt, we have a lower grade. But we are able to produce a high-grade concentrate, which most of our peers are not able to do that, especially at relatively high recovery rates. So if we compare ourselves, for instance, to Mount Weld project that Linus has, we are able to produce a higher or similar concentrate at about 40% or higher, 40% in our case, with the recoveries which are comparable. And recent results have actually shown that we have higher recoveries than Linus. So, and the reason for that is in part the nature of our deposit. We have the right minerals, similar to other producers, including perovskite, westernite, monazite, and that's key, as I said, for the economics. Once we produce a high-grade concentrate, the most costly step in the processing of rare earths is the hydrometallurgy. So to be able to process a high-grade mineral concentrate of more than 40%, that likely will make our project have the potential to be positive compared to our peers, which are forced, they're not able to produce this high-grade concentrate and are forced to process with acid or other processes that they use, or material that is 2, 3, 5, or 10% total rare earths. So you can imagine the effect in economics if one has to process a much lower grade, the amount of acid, the infrastructure size, and so forth. So this is a significant advantage for our project, and we're very happy with that. So, this slide essentially shows where we are positioned relative to our peers and the potential and why investors should really invest in a company. So as I said, last year, we put out the PA. We're not a very well-known company. We're still promoting the company, still promoting the story. Many of our peers have been around for more than 10 years, but we luckily check all the boxes. We have favorable mineralogy, as I showed. We have the bastnasite, the monazite, the common minerals produced by major producers. We have good lithologies with high-grade material, and we have a good resource that will allow to produce about 25,000 tons for several years. We are using conventional rare earth metallurgy. We do not have to reinvent the wheel here. We can see what Linus and others are doing, BioNoble, and follow a similar metallurgy to produce rare earth. We have excellent metallurgy. One can, we can drive to the property when the weather is good, and our team is very strong. We have done a lot of the long lead environmental work, and we are positioning ourselves to become major producers in the near term, right on time with the major production of electric vehicles. So, what we're planning to do, this slide shows our achievements in 2022. We filed the PA, we completed significant drilling, completed geotechnical drilling, work that is required for the pre-feasibility study. We have been able to prove that a high-grade concentrate can be produced even with lower grade ore. And we have also done something very important, which is to sign an agreement with the First Nations Exploration Development Agreement. We raised about over $12 million last year, and we will need to raise more this year to continue to progress to pre-feasibility study. So the first quarter, we plan to start the hydromet, which we already started. We press released that the pre-feasibility study is ongoing. We are continuing with advancing the environmental work. So this is the work that we're going to be doing, advancing the pre-feasibility, and hopefully complete early next year. So everything goes according to plan. By 2025, we expect to complete the feasibility, the full bankable feasibility study, and go into project financing. So this is some of our partners: SJ Field, SRK Consulting, and Apex Geoscience, a leading geological consulting provider. So these are the team that is working with us. This is the list of folks it's part of our management and directors, and I'll let you read that later. I conclude my presentation so that it gives time for questions. Thank you so much.
All right, great. Thank you very much, Luisa, for the great presentation. We currently don't have many questions, so I invite everyone who's watching right now to please write questions in. We don't take loud questions, so if you do have a question, for example, I see that maybe Jacques Gauvin here has a question, please write it in the Q&A or in the chat, and I will be very happy to ask the question. Maybe one thing, Luisa, and you touched it in the presentation, but I really want to put the emphasis on that. We all have the impression that when you're doing rare earth mineral, that means that you're having a green river and pollution everywhere, and that it's something extremely, extremely dirty. And I cannot put enough emphasis, and maybe you going back a little more deeper on that, on exactly how that can be done in a sustainable way. Which contaminants are you cutting actually in your phase and so on, and maybe giving a little more detail about that.
Sure. I think people have that impression because of images that have come out of China with folks, covered in dust. And those images really are associated with work that was done, in the past mostly. And those are ion adsorption clays, which are clays with very low rare earth concentrate. And they are processed in situ. So it is acid, or I'd say rather reagents that are sort of pumped in situ in the ground, into the ground, and all the process is really muddy and dirty, and frankly not very environmental friendly. But most of the hard rock plants, even in China, they are required to follow high standards, just like any copper mine or any gold mine in the West. And in fact, it's not more polluting than any other mining company. So I know also there's a lot of talk about liners in Malaysia. I think the reason for that is because they separate the thorium, the thorium and some of the uranium they have, and the Malaysians do not want that stored in their country. But that is done properly, separated, and preserved, in Malaysia. And the Malaysian folks don't want that to be done. They actually want them to return the thorium back to Australia. I think there's a lot of bad publicity. The other project, I think, is the one in Greenland that was blocked as well. And that's because that is actually a uranium project with byproduct rare earth. And uranium, I think, is no longer allowed to be produced in that country. So there is bad associations, but in fact, mining of rare earths, as I said, I cannot reiterate that enough, is like any other mining of any other base metals. There are proper ways of doing it, and that's what we will be doing at WICHEEDA.
Perfect. And we have Jacques Gauvin that wrote this question. What price do you expect for TREO?
TREO? So there are different, so in our project, we, neodymium praseodymium accounts for, a significant percentage of our deposit, about 95% of the value, because neodymium praseodymium sell for, say, about $100, and lanthanum cerium sell for $1 to $3. So the prices, although we have more lanthanum cerium in volume, the prices of praseodymium and neodymium, it's so high that accounts for most of what we will get in terms of revenue. So in that line, essentially, the long-term prices that independent analysts are looking is about $125 to $150 for neodymium praseodymium. And that's very important, projection. And so we use $100 in our PI, you're probably going to use it again $100 to be conservative, and that's $100 is long-term prices. Even as prices, even in demand doubles and potentially even triples, we are looking to keep it conservative at $100. We probably will use that for our pre-feasibility. But it depends on the independent analyst. We basically pay independent analyst or buy a report for independent analysts, and we use those prices. So it will depend on that. But me personally, I think it's going to be much higher, probably around $100, $125. So that's for long term. I don't think it would be 200. I think that would be crazy. I know some of my peers have used that number, but I think it's going to be conservative.
That's good to hear. Yeah, absolutely. I think it's a reasonable forecast for sure. How long will the money from the last capital raise last? So basically, what's your current cash position, and how long do you still have? And second question related to that, is it possible to get subsidies in Canada to start production?
Right. So the PA indicates that we're going to need $16 million Canadian to complete the pre-feasibility study. We raised $6 million in the beginning of the year. We're looking to raise the remaining $10 million. So you just put a press release out. We're raising $12 million with RCF, a major resource fund, contributing with about half of that, or more than half of that. So it's a validation for us. So that should be very good to advance the pre-feasibility study. And would we get subsidies? We're looking forward to that as we advance the project and prove that the project is strong, and we are engaging with the government. We expect the Canadian government, and potentially the US government as well, to contribute to the project with grants and subsidies, and hopefully that will limit dilution to the project in the long run.
Okay, good. One last detail. Also, we had a question that the prices you gave, were there in dollar per kilo or dollar per pounds?
That's kilos. So $100 per kilo. Sorry, I should have been make that clear, was what we use in the PA. And most analysts are looking at 125 to 150 per kilo for neodymium, praseodymium, odymium long-term prices around that range. And so the pre-feasibility study might have 125. I wouldn't want to use anything much higher, or we might stay conservative at $100. I think it's our call ultimately, but as long as it's not higher than what analysts is estimating, I think it's fair game.
Perfect. Well, Luisa, this is all the time we had. Thank you very much for the great presentation. We had great Q&A sessions, and we'll be looking forward to continue to see the story progress.
Thank you. Thank you so much. Have a nice day. Bye-bye.
Thank you. You too, Luisa. Bye-bye.